the galactic stage had long been dominated by ancient, advanced civilizations. These races, their technologies reaching heights unimaginable to most, had established a fragile peace across the stars, built upon an understanding of power and territory. Among them was the Vratak, a towering species whose war machines blotted out entire moons with ease. The Zyros, telepathic beings capable of moving planets with their minds, commanded reverence and fear. And then there were the Quarrens, genetically engineered to adapt to any environment, making them the ultimate explorers and conquerors. For centuries, humanity had observed, largely unnoticed by the larger galactic community. They were newcomers to the interstellar stage, their fleets unremarkable and their technologies humble compared to the powerful civilizations that called the stars home. Yet, within them burned an unshakable will, a drive not just to survive, but to thrive. They had a unique quality that none of the other races could replicate: resilience. Their capacity to adapt, their unrelenting hope, and their pursuit of unity in the face of adversity had become the hallmark of the human spirit. The first human diplomats who arrived in the capital of the Vratak Empire were met with skepticism and cold stares. These towering figures, draped in armor that looked like 100 years of war, questioned why such a fragile species dared to step into their halls. But the humans had a plan. They were not there to seek dominance, they were there to offer something that none of the other races had ever truly embraced: peace. True peace. Not one forged through the threat of destruction or mutual fear, but one based on cooperation, shared knowledge, and an open future. It began with a single, humble representative, Ambassador Aisha Tan, a diplomat from Earth. Her mission was one of unparalleled significance: to propose a new alliance, one that would bring all the galaxy's major powers under a banner of unity, forged from mutual respect and the promise of shared prosperity. When the Vratak leader, Emperor Durnak, scoffed at her, she didn't retreat. Instead, she spoke of the one thing that had always driven humanity to succeed: Hope Star. She spoke of how, despite centuries of hardship, humanity had found ways to uplift the downtrodden, cure diseases thought incurable, and transform barren worlds into lush havens of life. Her message was simple: together, all species could achieve greatness beyond their wildest imagination. While the Vratak Empire was initially uninterested, the presence of human diplomats slowly began to stir something deeper within the galaxy's power structures. For the first time, the Zyros were intrigued, not by humanity's technology, but by their ideology. To the telepathic beings, the humans' collective hope was like a beacon of warmth in the cold darkness of space. It was not their military prowess, not their technological advancement, but their spirit that caught the attention of the galaxy. Meanwhile, on the edges of the known universe, something darker stirred. An ancient force, long dormant, had begun to awaken. The Star, a race so old that their true form was barely remembered by the oldest civilizations, were returning. They had once held sway over vast star systems before vanishing into the shadows. No one knew why they had left, and no one knew what had caused their return. The only thing that was certain was that their return meant disaster for all who inhabited the galaxy. The Star brought with them destruction, war, and an understanding of dark technologies so advanced that even the Vratak trembled. With the Star growing ever closer, the major powers of the galaxy found themselves at an impasse. They could not defeat this new threat alone. Even the mighty Zyros, with their telepathic prowess, had no defense against the Star's shadowy technologies. It was at this moment that the humans' message of unity began to resonate more strongly. If they were to survive, they would need to stand together, or perish individually. Ambassador Tan, who had returned to Earth in the aftermath of her meeting with the Vratak, was summoned once more. This time, it was not for diplomacy with a single species, but for a galaxy-wide alliance. The time had come for humanity to step forward, not as a species struggling for survival, but as a unifier. With a newfound sense of purpose, the humans would lead the charge to bring together the disparate factions of the galaxy, to form an alliance against the coming storm. But there was one problem. The ancient powers of the galaxy, long set in their ways, were deeply divided. The very forces that could ensure their survival were also the ones least willing to embrace the change that humanity's alliance would bring. In a grand assembly on Earth, the representatives of the galaxy's great empires gathered in a massive hall, each race as different from the other as night is from day. Humanity, small but resolute, would be the glue that held them together. As the star forces loomed ever closer, the clock was ticking. Would humanity's unifying message be enough to unite the galaxy before the storm broke? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain, the galaxy was about to change forever. The summit on Earth was unlike any other the galaxy had ever seen. The vast hall, designed with a fusion of human engineering and the aesthetic sensibilities of numerous alien species, hummed with tension. Representatives from each of the galaxy's great civilizations filled the space, their diverse forms ranging from the graceful, ethereal figures of the Zyros to the towering, armored forms of the Vratak. The air crackled with the weight of history, as the fate of the galaxy rested on the shoulders of one humble species, humanity. Ambassador Aisha Tan stood before them, her voice calm but unwavering. She knew this was her moment, not just for Earth, but for every sentient being in the galaxy. The Star were on the move, and no empire, no matter how advanced, was prepared to face the full might of their ancient darkness. Humanity's role was clear: lead the charge for an alliance, a unified front that would stand against the encroaching shadow. The Vratak were the first to speak, their deep voices booming through the chamber. Emperor Dernak's eyes glinted with skepticism, yet his words held a begrudging respect for humanity's courage. You ask us to lay aside centuries of pride and tradition, to trust in a species barely more than a whisper in the stars. Why should we risk our empire for a race whose survival was only ensured through sheer luck? Aisha's gaze met his, unwavering. Because if we don't act together, your empire will be nothing more than a footnote in history. The Star don't care about pride. They don't care about tradition. They will destroy everything. The room fell silent. For a moment, the gathered leaders exchanged looks, communicating silently through gestures, telepathy, and glances. The Zyros, known for their ability to read minds, shared an uneasy connection as they listened to Aisha's words. They could sense the raw, unrelenting truth in her voice. Humanity was offering them something that no one else could, a chance to fight back. I sense her conviction, Zyros High Matriarch Elara said aloud, her voice soft yet clear. It is a rare thing, the conviction of a species that does not yet fully understand its own power. We do understand our power, Aisha replied, stepping forward. We may not have the weapons you do, but we have something far more dangerous, Unity Star. When we come together, when we stand as one, we are unstoppable. A murmur rippled through the room. The idea of unity was foreign to many of these species, who had long operated in isolation or under the threat of war. The Zyros, in particular, had long held themselves above the fray, believing that their mental abilities gave them superiority. The Vratak, with their unyielding strength and military dominance, had always preferred a strategy of force. Yet, the ancient threat of the Star was something that none of them could ignore. Even the Quarrens, once content to expand their reach quietly and without interference, now found themselves questioning their place in the galaxy. They were born adapters, able to survive in any environment, but this was different. This was not a challenge of survival but a challenge of existence itself. For the first time in a long while, the leaders of the galaxy found themselves listening to a voice they had long dismissed as insignificant. Humanity's call to unity had reached them in a way that none of the other great powers could replicate. Emperor Dernak finally spoke, his voice tinged with reluctant respect. We will not submit to your will, human. But, perhaps we will listen. Aisha knew that this was the first step. The Vratak may not have agreed to her terms, but they had opened the door. That was all she needed. But not all the leaders were so easily swayed. A faction of Quarrens, led by the ambitious and fiercely independent chieftain Varajin, remained unmoved. You ask for unity, he said, his voice laced with suspicion. But unity requires trust. And trust is something we have not earned from you, nor you from us. Aisha did not falter. Then let our actions speak for us. Let us stand side by side, fight side by side. You will see, in time, that humanity's strength is not in numbers, but in the depth of our resolve. The leaders were split. The seeds of doubt had been planted. Some, like the Vratak and Zyros, began to consider the possibility of cooperation. Others, like the Quarrens, remained entrenched in their old ways. Yet, as the summit drew to a close, the galaxy's first true alliance began to take shape. Humanity had not succeeded in fully convincing everyone, but they had accomplished something just as powerful. They had given the galaxy something to believe in. The clock was ticking. The star were closing in, and soon, the galaxy would have to decide whether it would stand united, or fall divided. And somewhere, deep in the galaxy, the first wave of star warships dropped out of hyperspace, silent, dark, and unstoppable. The galaxy, though fractured, had begun to show signs of a united front. The leaders of the major empires, Vratak, Zyros, Quarrens, and others, had grudgingly agreed to a ceasefire, allowing humanity's proposed alliance to take root. While the discussions were far from settled, there was a growing realization that the galaxy's survival might very well depend on cooperation. Yet, the window of time was narrowing. The star were coming, and with them, a wave of destruction unlike anything seen before. Ambassador Aisha Tan, now serving as the chief negotiator for the fledgling alliance, had made a bold decision. A unified fleet would be assembled to face the star head-on, using the combined military resources of the galaxy's greatest powers. She understood the importance of this move, not just as a strategic necessity, but as a symbol. The galaxy needed to see that despite their differences, they could stand together when it mattered most. The first strike came sooner than anyone anticipated. The star warships arrived without warning, dropping out of hyperspace just beyond the edge of the Talon system, a vital nexus of trade routes. These ships were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They were sleek, black as the void itself, with pulsating, eerie light emanating from their hulls. Their weapons were cloaked in dark energy, capable of ripping through shields and armor with terrifying ease. A fleet of human ships, along with the Vratak and Zyros forces, had already been stationed in the system, preparing for the worst. But nothing had prepared them for the brutal efficiency of the star attack. Within moments of the first star ship appearing, the human fleet's communications channels were flooded with screams and confusion. The star ships unleashed waves of dark energy, disrupting the fleet's navigational systems and rendering their weapons useless. The advanced technologies of the Zyros and Vratak were disabled as if they had been nothing more than toys in the hands of the star. The Zyros, accustomed to mental fortitude, found their telepathic abilities warped and twisted by the star's dark influence. Their communications became distorted, their minds scrambling to maintain control. The Vratak, their ships crippled and their weapons failing, retreated into a defensive posture, but their usual arrogance had faded. The galaxy's greatest military force was struggling, against a foe they could neither see nor understand. Aisha Tan watched from the bridge of the human flagship, the Pioneer, her eyes steely with resolve. The situation was dire, but she knew that this battle was more than a test of firepower, it was a test of will. Humanity's strength lay not in their ships, not in their weapons, but in their refusal to give up. They were not here to fight for survival, they were here to win, to show the galaxy that the power of unity could overcome even the darkest of forces. Captain, deploy the human reserve fleet. I want every ship at full readiness. We can't wait for the others to make a move, Aisha commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. The captain, a seasoned officer named Captain Marcus Holt, nodded, his face pale but determined. Yes, Ambassador. Sending orders now. Despite their technological inferiority, humanity's fleet held an unexpected advantage: adaptability. The human ships, designed with modular technology and quick response systems, were capable of adapting on the fly. They weren't the fastest or the most powerful, but they had something that none of the other fleets could match: creativity and resourcefulness. The crews had trained for scenarios like this, adverse situations, desperate moments, where sheer ingenuity could tip the scales. In the midst of the attack, the human fleet began to turn the tide. They activated experimental countermeasures developed specifically for the star threat, an energy pulse designed to disrupt the dark energy fields of the star warships. It wasn't enough to destroy the enemy, but it created a temporary vulnerability in their ships, weakening their ability to phase in and out of cloaking and blocking some of their most devastating attacks. The Zyros, recovering their telepathic strength, began to relay the humans' tactics to their fleets, while the Vratak, though still reluctant to fully engage, launched their remaining heavy artillery. It wasn't a perfect cooperation, but it was enough to cause a dent in the star's advance. Then came the moment that would define the future of the galaxy. As the star flagship, a massive, shadowy vessel known as the Doombringer, loomed over the battlefield, humanity's most daring plan was put into motion. The Pioneer moved into the heart of the star fleet, its engines pushed to their limit, carrying with it the final weapon, an experimental device powered by both human ingenuity and the alien tech from the Vratak and Zyros. It was an explosive energy matrix designed to destabilize the star's dark matter technology, breaking their stranglehold on the battlefield. The mission was a suicide run. Aisha knew it, Captain Holt knew it, but they did not hesitate. The device was activated and deployed. A massive burst of light erupted from the Pioneer, ripping through the star fleet in a blinding explosion of energy. For a brief moment, everything was silent. The shockwave sent ripples across the battlefield, leaving only debris and the remains of the star warships floating in space. But the Doombringer was still standing. The battle was far from over. But humanity had made its first move, and the galaxy had seen what they were capable of. The aftermath of the first battle was nothing short of catastrophic. The explosion created by humanity's energy matrix had crippled the star fleet, but it had come at a terrible price. The Pioneer, along with nearly half of the human reserve fleet, had been destroyed in the blast. The remaining ships limped back to the safety of the nearby planet Talon Prime, the once vibrant fleet now a collection of battered hulls, their crews shaken but resolute. Ambassador Aisha Tan stood on the observation deck of the Talon Prime space station, her gaze lost in the vastness of the cosmos. The stars stretched out before her like 1,000 distant promises, each one a world that depended on the success of the alliance she had worked so hard to form. The battle was a victory, but it was one marked by sorrow. Too many lives had been lost. Captain Marcus Holt, now the highest-ranking human officer alive after the destruction of the Pioneer, approached Aisha. His face was grim, eyes reflecting the weight of what they had just endured. "We did what we had to do." "But at what cost, Ambassador?" Aisha didn't respond immediately. The weight of the question hung in the air. The alliance, which had only just begun to form, was now under an immense strain. The human fleet had taken the brunt of the attack. Many of the larger empires, like the Zyros and Vratak, had held back, hesitant to commit fully. Their forces had been significant, yes, but it was humanity's quick thinking, its resilience, and ultimately, its willingness to sacrifice that had changed the course of the battle. "The cost was high, Marcus," Aisha said, finally breaking the silence. "But the galaxy saw what we did. The others saw it. We did more than just survive, we fought." Captain Holt nodded, his jaw clenched. "I know. But you can't fight wars on hope alone." "I know that too," Aisha replied, her voice soft but firm. "We need more than just hope, Marcus. We need trust. We need belief that we can do this together, or all the sacrifices we've made will have been for nothing." As the two stood in silence, a transmission pinged through. It was from the Zyros' High Matriarch, Elara. The Zyros had been shaken by the loss of so many ships, but they had not turned away from the alliance. Her voice, though calm, carried the weight of an ancient race contemplating a new path. "Ambassador Tan, we have seen what your people are capable of," Elara said, her voice echoing through the comms. "The Zithar are not the only threat the galaxy faces. In the wake of their first strike, we must consider how far we are willing to go to protect the future." Aisha's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" The Zyros matriarch hesitated before speaking again. "There are factions within our council who believe that the Star are not just a threat to our way of life. There are those who would see us destroy the Star before they can unify the galaxy against us. There are those who seek an end to their existence. It is not a question of if we defeat them, Ambassador, but how we defeat them. The coldness in Ellara's tone sent a shiver down Aisha's spine. For the first time, she realized that the Zyros were not entirely aligned with the idea of unity. There were factions within each empire, each race, that saw the galaxy's dark future as an opportunity to expand their own power. The alliances she had worked so hard to build were fragile, and it was only a matter of time before cracks began to show. I understand, Aisha said softly, steeling herself. But we must hold true to our purpose. We're not just fighting to defeat the star. We're fighting for a future where all species can coexist. We must keep that vision alive, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, the Vratak were grappling with their own doubts. Emperor Dernak, ever the pragmatic leader, had spent the past several days analyzing the outcome of the battle. The Vratak Empire, once dominant and untouchable, had been humbled by the star's power. And now, they were considering something that seemed unthinkable, joining forces with the other races, not just as allies, but as equals. At a clandestine meeting aboard one of their warships, Dernak's council gathered to discuss their next move. His second-in-command, General Thrath, spoke first. We've seen the truth now. The Star are a threat unlike any we've ever faced. But what do we gain by standing with the humans and the Zyros? We've always ruled with strength, not with diplomacy. Dernak's cold eyes turned toward the general. And yet, we were nearly destroyed in the first battle. Strength alone will not be enough. If we do not adapt, we will fall. The humans have shown us something we have never considered: trust in one another. We must learn from them. If we do not, we will be lost. His words hung in the air, and for the first time, the Vratak Council did not object. The seeds of change had been planted. Though not all were ready to embrace unity, Dernak's words had struck a chord. The idea of strength in unity, humanity's greatest gift, was beginning to resonate with those who had long thought themselves above it. But time was running out. The Star were regrouping, preparing for a second strike. And though humanity had made great strides in uniting the galaxy, the true test of that unity had not yet come. Would the galaxy stand together in the face of total annihilation, or would the cost of their differences be too much to bear? Aisha Tan knew the answer. But whether the galaxy would follow her lead remained to be seen. The Star were not a race accustomed to defeat. The explosion that had crippled their fleet was not a victory for the galaxy, it was merely a delay. The darkness that was their essence now stirred with new fervor, and they were preparing for their second wave, an onslaught that would test the very core of the galaxy's fragile alliance. The threat was no longer just military, it was psychological, for the Star understood something that the rest of the galaxy had yet to learn: how to exploit division. The alliance was hanging by a thread. The loss of human ships, the Vratak's reluctance to fully commit, the Zyros' internal factions, all of it was building toward an inevitable fracture. Humanity had led the first assault, but the second battle would demand more than bravery. It would demand a unity that no one was sure could be achieved. Ambassador Aisha Tan had just returned to Talon Prime from a series of grueling diplomatic meetings when she received the news. The second wave of Star ships was already on the move, their dark fleet gathering in the Lerna system, a pivotal point for galactic trade and military operations. This time, the Star were not coming alone. They had rallied new factions, rogue warlords, mercenary bands, and other disgruntled species who had been silently watching the alliance's rise, waiting for an opportunity to strike. On board the flagship Aegis, now a symbol of humanity's resolve, Aisha looked out over the war room, her team gathered around the table. Captain Holt, though still haunted by the loss of his comrades in the first battle, was focused and determined. "Ambassador, we've analyzed the Star's movements," Holt said, his voice steady. "They're coming in full force. This time, they're coordinating their fleets with precision. We're not just fighting Star warships, we're fighting their allies too." Aisha's mind raced. She had expected this. The Star were smart, calculating. They wouldn't just throw everything at the galaxy in one chaotic push. They would weaken the resolve of each empire piece by piece, turning factions against one another. A galaxy already divided was ripe for manipulation. And yet, in this moment of looming destruction, Aisha found herself clinging to the one thing humanity could offer, Hope Star. If they could hold together just a little longer, if the Alliance could survive this test, then perhaps the star's darkness could finally be pushed back. The Vratak will have to commit, Aisha said, her voice low but firm. There's no more time for hesitation. We need their strength if we're going to stand a chance. Captain Holt nodded. I've sent a message to Emperor Durnak, but it's unclear if he's ready to follow through. Their military is still recovering from the last battle. We don't have time to wait for them, Aisha replied. I'll go to the Vratak personally. We can't let them fall into the trap the Star have set. If they divide us now, we'll lose everything. As Aisha prepared to depart, the comms officer alerted her to an incoming transmission. It was from High Matriarch Elara of the Zyros, and her voice was heavy with concern. Ambassador Tan, the matriarch began, our intelligence has revealed the Star's true strategy. They are targeting the heart of our psychic network. They believe if they can sever the link between our minds, they will cripple our ability to coordinate, to form any unified strategy. If we do not act swiftly, the Zyros will fall into disarray. And if we fall, the Alliance is lost. Aisha clenched her fists. The Zyros had long been the galaxy's mental architects, their psychic abilities giving them a clear advantage in battle. But if the Star could sever that link, if they could destroy the Zyros' ability to communicate telepathically, then the galaxy's greatest telepaths would become nothing more than a shadow of themselves, fragmented and weak. We won't let that happen, Aisha said, her resolve hardening. We will protect your minds, Matriarch. And we will unite the galaxy, no matter the cost. As the transmission ended, Aisha turned to Captain Holt. Prepare the fleet. We're heading to the Lerna system. We may have one chance to stop the Star from splitting the Alliance forever. But as she spoke, a dark shadow fell over the war room. The Alliance's greatest fear had come true, what the Star had failed to accomplish in the first strike, they were now poised to achieve, division. The Vratak had pulled back. Emperor Durnak had made his move, but it was not to join humanity. It was to withdraw his forces entirely, citing the need to protect his people from what he called unnecessary risks. He had effectively abandoned the Alliance. Aisha's heart sank as she processed the news. The Vratak, those whose military might have been their defining strength, were now fighting for their own survival, unwilling to sacrifice further. In their retreat, they had provided an opening for the Star to infiltrate and divide. We can't let them win, Aisha said, her voice rising. We can't let the Star turn our weakness into their victory. This is our moment, the moment humanity shows what it means to lead. As the human fleet prepared to launch into the Lerna system, word came from the Zyros. Their psychic defenses were faltering, the Star's influence pressing in from every side. But the Zyros were not without hope. They had sensed a shift in the balance. They were not alone. In a surprising turn of events, the Quarrens, who had long remained neutral, sent an unexpected fleet to the front lines, rallying under the banner of unity. They had seen the potential in humanity's leadership and now stood with the Alliance, bolstering its ranks with their adaptive technologies and agile forces. With the Quarrens joining the fight and humanity holding firm, the battle for the Lerna system became the defining moment. The Star's second wave was upon them, but this time, they would face not just human courage, but the determination of a galaxy united. The battle for the Lerna system would go down in history as the defining moment that determined the fate of the galaxy. The Star had come with the full force of their dark fleet, warships cloaked in void energy, their technology beyond anything the galaxy had ever encountered. But this time, they were facing a united front that no one had ever imagined: humanity, the Zyros, the Quarrens, and what remained of the Vratak forces, now led by a reluctant but resolute Emperor Durnak. Aisha Tan stood on the bridge of the Aegis, her eyes scanning the holographic projections of the battlefield ahead. The Lerna system was a critical nexus, not just for military strategy, but for trade and communication across the galaxy. Losing it would mean losing a foothold in the war, losing everything they had fought for. But humanity had something that the Star could never comprehend, the belief that even in the darkest times, hope was a weapon more powerful than any fleet. The Alliance fleet had gathered, human, Zyros, Quarren, and a contingent of Ratak ships, their once proud hulls now scarred but determined. It was a patchwork of cultures, technologies, and ideologies, but it was united. The combined fleet had a chance to make history, but the Star had already shown how they could manipulate the galaxy's weaknesses. Every ship in the Alliance would have to fight not only the enemy, but the deep-seated divisions within their own ranks. As the first wave of Star warships appeared in the Lerna system, their shadows spread across the stars. The fleet was immense, stretching into the distance like a black storm. The Star ships were unnervingly silent, their dark energy pulses radiating from them like a silent threat. In response, the Allied fleet readied itself, engines humming as shields were powered and weapons systems calibrated. "Captain Holt," Aisha said, her voice steady but laced with urgency, "we need to hold the line at all costs. The Zyros can't afford to lose their psychic network. If they do, their minds will be severed from the rest of the Alliance. We need to protect them at all costs." "We're ready, Ambassador," Holt replied, his voice calm despite the chaos surrounding them. "But we'll be outnumbered. We'll have to be quick, hit hard, and work together." "Then let's show them the power of unity," Aisha said with a determined nod. The battle began with a deafening explosion as the Star unleashed their first wave of devastating energy pulses. The initial shockwave sent ripples through the Alliance's formations, shaking ships and causing minor breaches. But the Alliance fought back immediately, human ships darting through the debris, Zyros vessels unleashing psychic blasts that disoriented the Star's dark energy fields, and Quarren ships using their speed and agility to strike from unexpected angles. It was chaos, beautiful chaos, in which the galaxy's diverse forces had learned to trust each other, each culture bringing its own strengths to the fight. But despite their collective power, the Star were relentless. They adapted quickly, cloaking their ships and using subversive tactics to sow discord among the Alliance's ranks. As predicted, the Star began to target the Zyros' psychic link, sending specialized warships designed to disrupt their telepathic abilities. The Zyros' matriarch, Lara, knew the moment the Star attacked, their psychic assault was designed to sever their communications, creating confusion and paranoia. And though the Zyros' psychic network was strong, even they could feel the strain. In the midst of the battle, Lara's voice rang out across the comms, her telepathic pulse a beacon for the Zyros' ships. "We will not fall to them. Stand firm, my people. Stand together." But even as the Zyros resisted, there was an unmistakable crack in their defenses. The Star were too powerful, too coordinated. As the psychic blockade began to tighten, the Vratak fleet, led by Emperor Durnak, hesitated once again, caught between their desire for survival and the knowledge that their fate was tied to the success of this battle. Aisha's heart sank as she watched the Vratak ships falter. But she didn't have time to worry about it now. She had to act. With a quick decision, she ordered the human fleet to push forward with a daring maneuver, diving into the heart of the Star formation. "We're going in," Aisha said, her voice filled with resolve. "Full speed ahead. We're going to break their line." Captain Holt didn't hesitate. "Aye, Ambassador." With precise coordination, the human fleet surged forward, cutting through the Star's defenses with a series of explosive energy pulses and EMP blasts. The Quarren fleet, understanding the importance of the mission, followed suit, their ships darting through the darkness, creating chaos within the Star ranks. And for a moment, the tide of battle seemed to shift. But the Star weren't done. Their flagship, the Doombringer, loomed large on the battlefield, its dark energy coils pulsing with terrible power. It had remained untouched until now, and it unleashed its full fury, sending a massive wave of dark energy cascading toward the center of the Allied fleet. The blast tore through the Quarren ships, sending them scattering into the void. In the chaos that followed, something remarkable happened. The Vratak, for all their reluctance, chose to act. Led by Emperor Dernak, they committed their entire remaining fleet, charging into the heart of the star formation with all the strength and fury their empire was known for. Dernak had made his choice, he would not let the star divide them. Now, together! Aisha commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. The final push had begun. With the Vratak now fully engaged, the combined might of the Alliance surged forward, overwhelming the star flagship. The human fleet, despite their losses, had proven they could adapt, utilizing every weapon at their disposal, every trick they had learned, every scrap of ingenuity humanity was known for. It wasn't the star's dark energy or their overwhelming numbers that won the battle, it was the galaxy's ability to come together when it mattered most. And so, against all odds, the Doombringer fell. The star fleet began to crumble, their dark energy dissipating as their coordinated attacks faltered. The Alliance had done it. But the victory was bittersweet. The Lerna system had been saved, but at a heavy cost. The combined fleet had suffered catastrophic losses. Still, the message had been sent. The galaxy had fought as one, united by a common cause. And the star, though they had been driven back, would return. But next time, they would not find the galaxy divided. They would find a galaxy united. The silence that followed the battle for the Lerna system was deafening. The once vibrant stars of the system, now clouded by debris and the remnants of destroyed ships, seemed distant, almost mournful. The star had been defeated, for now, but the cost had been unimaginable. Humanity had bled, as had the Zyros, the Vratak, and even the Quarrens. The Alliance had won, but victory had a heavy price, one that none of them would soon forget. Ambassador Aisha Tan stood in the command center of the Aegis, gazing out at the damage. The lights of the station flickered, but the stars beyond were shining once again. It was a fragile piece, one that teetered on the edge of something much larger, much more dangerous. The galaxy was forever changed, but for better or for worse, only time would tell. "We did it," Captain Holt said from beside her, his voice weary but triumphant. "We turned the tide. The star were beaten back." Aisha nodded slowly. "Yes, but not without sacrifice. Our fleet, the Zyros fleet, so many lives lost. We must remember why we fought, not just to survive, but to give the galaxy hope." As she spoke, a transmission came through. It was from High Matriarch Ellara, who had emerged from the psychic chaos with her people bruised, but resolute. Ambassador Tan, Ellara's voice rang through the comms, the power of her psychic presence echoing in her words. "The Zyros are forever grateful for your people's courage. Without the humans, we would have fallen. You have proven to the galaxy what it means to unite, and for that, we owe you more than our lives." Aisha's heart swelled at the matriarch's words, but she remained grounded. There was still much to do. "Thank you, matriarch," Aisha replied, her voice steady but sincere. "But we have only just begun. The star will not stop. They will regroup, rebuild, and return. This fight is far from over." Ellara paused, her telepathic presence becoming more thoughtful. "You are right. The darkness that is the star will always be with us. But what you have done, Ambassador, what humanity has done, you have shown us that we are stronger together. And together, we can face whatever comes next." As the transmission ended, a voice interrupted. It was Emperor Dernak of the Vratak, now standing by the entrance of the command center, his towering form silhouetted against the dim light of the room. His people, once solitary in their pursuit of power, had now seen a new path forward. "Aisha," Dernak said, his voice gravely serious but tinged with something new, respect. "I owe you an apology. We, Vratak, have always believed that our strength was enough to face anything, but we were wrong. The star proved that we are not invincible. You led us to victory today, and for that, I will stand by you. By all of us." Aisha turned to face the Emperor, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of gratitude and the weight of what lay ahead. Your people fought bravely, Durnak. We've all lost so much. But it's only by standing together that we can hope to build something that lasts. The Vratak Emperor nodded, his face solemn. Then let us stand together. As the room fell into a thoughtful silence, a new transmission came through. This time, it was from the Quarren fleet, who had contributed greatly to the final push against the star. Their leader, Quanith, spoke with quiet dignity, the weight of their people's decision clear in his tone. Ambassador Tan, Quanith said. We have long remained neutral, believing that we had no stake in the galaxy's wars. But you and your people have shown us something different, that our future is bound to the future of this galaxy. We will not turn our backs again. The Quarrens stand with you, with all of you. The finality in Quanitha's words echoed like a thunderclap through the minds of all those present. The galaxy's most stubbornly independent species had committed. Unity was no longer just an ideal, it was becoming a reality. Aisha took a deep breath, her mind processing the enormity of what had just transpired. There was still much work to do. The war wasn't over. The star would return, perhaps stronger than before, and new threats would emerge as old alliances began to fray. But the galaxy had changed in ways none of them had expected. It had found its strength not in the power of a single race, but in the combined will of all its peoples. The galaxy was no longer divided. It was united by something far more powerful than the force of weapons or the strategies of generals. It was united by the hope that, together, they could build something greater than themselves. A future where they could all coexist, despite their differences. Where the strength of humanity's spirit would act as a beacon to light the way. Aisha Tan stood tall, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond, the weight of the future pressing on her shoulders. But for the first time, it was a weight she carried with pride. The road ahead would be difficult, but she was not alone. Humanity had found its place among the stars, and with it, a new chapter in the history of the galaxy was about to begin. And it would begin with unity.